All right, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Ann, and I am here on behalf of Friends of the Lost Coast to present to you Birding 101. And Friends of the Lost Coast, let me just say a few things about them before we get going. They are a nonprofit organization based in southern Humboldt County whose mission is to inspire a passion for understanding and preserving the natural life of the Lost Coast region. They work with many partner organizations to provide education, youth programs, and opportunities for community members to get out in nature and become stewards of this amazing environment we live in. To learn more about these programs and for information about how to volunteer or make a donation, please visit www.lostcoast.org or check out Friends of Lost Coast on Instagram and Facebook. So, my name's Ann Constantino. I've lived in the southern Humboldt area since about 1973. I've had a passion for birds my whole life, and that especially grew after I moved here as a teenager. I'm not an expert, but I have been a serious birder since about 2016, and I'm in a good position as a relatively recent serious birder to offer other newbies some good advice, I hope. So I'm not sure what it is about birds that enchants people so much. Maybe it's flight, maybe it's music, maybe it's beauty, but birds definitely seem to really capture our hearts and minds. This is a little baby Canada goose, a recently hatched gosling on the South Fork of the Eel. We've just started having this happen, at least in my lifetime. Only for the past couple of years have the Canada geese actually bred on the river. So this is a pretty exciting thing to get to watch these little families grow up. So birding can be looked at in a variety of ways. Some people say that birding and bird watching are two different things, that birding is a little more serious, a little more about identifying, looking for rarities, that type of thing. And bird watching is a little more casual. But I feel like in a lot of ways, watching birds is where you actually learn the most about them. You can go out and find certain birds and tick them off a list. Oh, I've seen this, I've seen that. But really, when you spend the time to watch them is when you really get intimate with them and learn so much more. But there are a lot of different ways to watch birds or do birding, however you want to call it. Just observing, as we talked about, counting. Some people will participate in these citizen science events and go out and count birds for a whole day. And ornithologists and other scientists use that information. It's very helpful to have that input because birds are changing. We've lost billions and billions of birds through pollution and habitat loss. Climate change is having a lot of unforeseen effects on migration and other things. So these counting events are really, really helpful if you can participate in them. A lot of people love to identify birds. They see something, they maybe see it, maybe hear it as well. What is it? What is it? I have that interest as well, of course, but I also, when I can't identify something, I try not to get too frustrated. I just enjoy watching birds, whether I know what they are or not. Chasing rarities is something that you get into as you get a little more serious. When you're first starting out, almost everything you see is a new bird to you. So once you've got a few of those under your belt, then you start getting interested in the rarities that might show up. They've missed a tern on their migration route, or for some other reason, maybe climate change, who knows? There's an odd bird in the area. You can sign up for rare bird alerts and be notified in your email or on your phone that there's some interesting bird nearby, and you can get in your car and go chase it and find another group. It's a great way to meet other birders as well, because there's usually a mob of them around looking at those unusual birds. And I think birding is just a wonderful way to be in nature. We could all use more of that. So this is a little Steller's jay, one of our characters of our north coast birds. What do you need to bird? You definitely need some binoculars, something that's going to bring birds in close. A lot of times they're high in trees or far away. We'll go into how to choose and use binoculars in a moment. You need a field guide or an app that acts as a field guide on your phone. You need to be dressed appropriately. You don't want to go out in the midday sun, all bundled up, or out at the crack of dawn with a t-shirt and shorts. And you need lots of time. It really takes time to become a good birder. You can do it casually, but until you really spend the time, it'll only be casually enjoyable. And of course, you need birds. So binoculars, this is a mallard, male mallard on the river here, not far from Garberville. And the picture on the left is how you would see him with the naked eye, and then put him in the binoculars, and you get this beautiful look like the one on the right there. You can see all the colors, the feather detail. You can see so much more about the bird when you magnify it. So those numbers there, that 8x42, when you're out looking for binoculars, that's a good place to start for birders. That first number is the degree of magnification, and the second number is how wide the field of view is. And you can certainly get binoculars that have more magnification and a bigger field of view, but when you're just learning, it's good to start with something a little more basic. That's still going to bring the bird in nice and close, but it isn't going to be a big struggle for you when you're just starting out. The more magnification you have, the harder it is to find that little bird that you could see with the naked eye. There's a link there that will take you to a good website to show binoculars of every quality in every budget. You can skip the $50 pair from the sporting goods store. Try to buy binoculars where you can actually go and feel them and try them out. It's very helpful to know that it's going to feel good in your hand, not be too heavy, not be too light, and that you have a good sense of how to operate the focus. When you get your binoculars, you definitely want to practice before you go out and try it out on birds. Birds are usually moving around, and it's best to practice a little bit on a stationary object that's far away, so that when you do see that special bird, you're prepared and you're not going to lose it because you can't get your binoculars on it. The best way to practice is to see something far away, locate something far away with your naked eye, and then keep your gaze fixed on that object, and then bring the binoculars to your face. So you don't want to look down at the binoculars and then have to find the bird again with the binoculars at your face. Keep your eye on that bird the entire time. Then bring the binoculars up and it'll still be there for you. So you can practice on anything. Just go outside, pick out a leaf at the top of a tree, and get really good at it when you don't have a moving object, and then you'll be pretty darn good at it when you have your first bird. Field guides, I love to carry a book with me when I'm especially an unfamiliar place where I don't know all the birds, but you can do really well with apps these days as well. So Sibley, for me, is the gold standard for both the field guide book and the app. There are many, many others out there. I haven't tried that many, but lots of people swear by some of the other apps. I like to have a wide variety of books because they show things from different angles. Some use artwork, some use photography. Every field guide has a little bit different information in it from all the others. So when you're really stuck on something, you're not sure, it's great to have a lot of different sources. Obviously, I have plenty there. And there's another link there that can help you pick out what the best guides or apps would be for you. I also really recommend joining eBird. You can get a free account at ebird.org. It's another citizen science website, and it's really your best friend for birding, apart from your human friends, of course. You can look up anything you can imagine. You can look up species, you can look up locations, population. The bar charts showed what time of the year the populations of certain birds are greater or less. You can look at other people's uploads of audio and photos, audio clips and photos. So it's like having another whole set of guidebooks at your fingertips or on your phone. So it doesn't cost anything. It's very intuitive to use. It's fun to just play around on eBird and imagine, if you want to go to Alaska, you look up Alaska on eBird and see what's there, what time of year, what other people have been seeing, what they've been photographing. It's great fun. And once you've been on eBird for a while, you'll have a page that looks something like this. eBird is also a great way to do your checklists. Usually birders, when they're out in the field, they'll keep track of what they've seen, make little notes about it, and you can do that so much more quickly and conveniently on eBird. It's just right at your fingertips there, rather than in a little notebook that you seem to always have a pen that's running out of ink or a broken pencil, and you're trying to scratch down the bird you just saw, and meanwhile you hear another one go by and you might miss it. With eBird, you just one tap and your bird is recorded and you're good to go. So you've got your field guide, excuse me, you've got your field guide, you've got your binoculars, now what? So dress appropriately. It might be the crack of dawn, it might be the middle of the day, you might be spending a whole day out somewhere, so just, you want to be comfortable. You can move very slowly, or you can just be still, but birds know when you're walking quickly. They take that as a sign of not exactly danger, but they'll be on the alert, and they won't be as open to showing themselves when somebody's walking quickly. Look and listen everywhere. You never know what is making that rustle in the bushes or up in the tree, so you can always rely on your senses, your hearing and your vision to clue you into where the birds are. Patience and quiet are really important. Take your time. When you hear something, it might take 5 minutes before you can figure out where that bird is and get a glimpse of it. So wait quietly and you will be rewarded. It's great to go with friends, but it's more about socializing with the birds. So a lot of friends out birding can turn into a wonderful time to spend with your fellow humans, but you may not see many birds if you're socializing a lot. Go at the right time of day. For shorebirds and things like that, at the beach, it might have to do with tides. For songbirds, it might have to do with the morning. Birds are most active right after light in the morning. Some get up a little bit later. The insect eaters may not become active until it's warm enough for insects to be flying around, but basically from dawn until about 9 o'clock in the summertime, maybe 10 or 11 o'clock in the wintertime is going to be your main time there. And good birding etiquette, that's a complicated subject that you'll have to work out on your own, how you feel about some of these issues. But basically, good etiquette means that you're respectful of the environment and respectful of birds being wild creatures. Some people draw the line at using recorded calls to draw them in. Some people don't. Some people draw the line at pishing, which is just making funny little sounds like psh, 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 psh. And when you make sounds like that, it's called pishing. Birds will hear that and get curious about it, and a lot of times they'll come to that source of sound, and so you can sometimes call birds in that way. Other people draw the line at baiting birds. Now, I have feeders out in my yard. Is that a form of baiting? Probably. Would I put a piece of meat out for a raptor? No, I wouldn't do that. So, that's me. You have to work that out for yourself. And the other thing about etiquette is when you're out birding and you run into other birders, be quiet and polite, especially if you see that they're intently looking at something. Don't go barreling in, hey, what do you see? What do you see? Approach quietly, respectfully, and they will be sure to be happy to share their prize if you approach in that way. So some people like to be very prepared when they go out, have a dozen pockets and 3 sets of binoculars and a spotting scope and 12 cameras and everything else, and several changes of clothes and who knows what else. But sometimes the very best experiences that you have are when you least expect it. My husband and I found the Benbow bald eagle's nest, and on an occasion like that, we were out at a crazy time of day. It was 100 degrees out. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We were walking around up on the old dam road behind the Benbow Inn and not seeing anything. We weren't hearing anything but loud insects. Suddenly, a bald eagle went flying up the valley. I got him in my binoculars and followed him all the way into the nest. And that was just one of the most remarkable birding experiences I've ever had. And we've been watching that nest ever since then. So other people, other times, maybe you're really much more careful, much more prepared. Make sure that you're safe, whether you're winging it or being prepared, and have what you need available. So this is a little collage just to show that some birds are really obvious and striking, and other birds you just never know when you might see them. So that little varied thrush up in the upper left, very camouflaged there, deep in the brush. But to the right there, that black skimmer that we had last winter, just a totally obvious, wild-looking creature, way out of its range. That was a rarity we had for a couple months last winter. Little song sparrow down on the far right there blends in really well with the autumn leaves caught on the willow branches there by the river. The big hawk, the red-tailed hawk in the power pole, if you were far away, you might not see that guy. So I really recommend checking out power poles whenever you're driving around in fairly open country. You never know what you might see. Acorn woodpeckers, we all know them around here. They make that sort of laughing, rusty bedspring sound, and they are very obvious, easy to find acorn woodpeckers. And then lots of times people put things out for birds. There's a wonderful network of birdhouses at the community park here in southern Humboldt, and there's a tree swallow making use of that. So birds are receptive to our help. So next few slides, we're going to look at some comparisons of two birds and how you use field marks to determine which one is which. Couple things before we start. Size is always going to be deceptive. Unless you really have context, another object in your field of view whose size you know, or another bird whose size you know, don't trust yourself, because a sparrow might look the size of an eagle and an eagle might look the size of a sparrow in certain situations. So don't trust yourself about size. And another thing to do is often it really is helpful to use process of elimination. So if you've got your field guide, you can eliminate certain birds and know that once those are eliminated, you may only have 2 or 3 choices, and that can really help you narrow it down. So these two egrets, here's another example of if you saw these separately, you wouldn't realize probably how much smaller that snowy egret is, but it's really just a fraction of the size of the great egret. But what else do you notice that's different about them? Their bills are different color. So, and also on these particular birds, their behavior is quite different. Great egrets will stand and like a statue and wait for a fish to swim by and then spear it. Snowy egrets, on the other hand, a smaller, more active bird, wades around kind of erratically, stirring up the mud, poking into the water and into the substrate with its beak. Behavior can also be almost as good as a field mark and sometimes better. So here's a couple little sparrows that we have pretty common around here. The white crowns we have mostly in the wintertime, although you can see them in Eureka all year round. And the song sparrow on the left is a year-round resident for us. So if in poor light, you could see how it would be easy to mistake these birds for each other. But you can see some differences as well. The color of the bill. And with sparrows, one of the most important things is its breast streaked or unstreaked. And so you can see on the white crown on the right there are no streaks. On the song sparrow, there are streaks. This is a couple of flycatchers, and they have a similar shape. They've got that kind of crest at the top of their head. They've got long tails. A skinny beak, which is suited to catching insects on the wing. But in this case, and they both have wing bars. So if in poor light, you could possibly mistake these two, except what will stand out even in poor light, on the left, the Pacific slope flycatcher has that eye ring, that white eye ring there. So all birds have eye rings, but not all of them are that high contrast. Here's a couple of hawks that are pretty common around here. The one on the left is a Cooper's hawk. That's a bird hawk, and it flies around in pretty foresty areas to catch other birds. It's got to be able, like birds, like the birds that it catches, it's got to be able to maneuver really quickly. And so it's got short wings. And the way you can tell that it has short wings is the difference. You can see the end of the wing feathers there, and how much more tail is sticking out past the end of those wing feathers. So long tail, short wings on the Cooper's hawk, a bird hawk. And you can tell that particular bird is young because it has a light colored eye. When that bird matures, its eye will be kind of a deep reddish orange. On the right is a red-tailed hawk, and it's got a totally different hunting strategy. It will soar over open country, and you can see how long its wings are. The primary feathers come all the way down almost to the end of the red tail. And you can tell this bird is a mature bird, not just because it's got the red tail, but because of the eye color as well. Here's a couple of goldfinches that we see in the summertime. We see them like this. In the wintertime, they're very drab. They don't look very different at all. I'm not ever sure whether I'm seeing a lesser or an American goldfinch in the wintertime. But in the springtime, the males turn these beautiful yellow colors. And so here again, we've got a few field marks we can look at having to do with color. So the black cap on the lesser goldfinch on the right covers more of its head. And the American goldfinch has just like a little forehead black patch there. And then, of course, on the back of the bird, the American goldfinch is bright yellow, and the lesser goldfinch has that kind of drab olive color. These two birds could be mistaken for each other. They're very common to see at the park right now, at the community park outside of Garberville. Beautiful blue color, and otherwise different shape of bill. The bunting on the left, the lazuli bunting, is more of a seed eater, and the western bluebird on the right is more of an insect eater. So those bills are built to do those things. But otherwise, you can see quite a few similarities of these birds: the red breast, the gray bellies. And one other difference you might notice: the bunting has wing bars and the bluebird does not. As I mentioned before, when we were looking at the egrets, a lot of times behavior is going to clue you in to what a bird is. This is a little downy woodpecker. I got to watch this couple of downy woodpeckers excavate this nest over the last few weeks, and they're actively coming and going in there now. I don't know whether there are eggs in there now or not yet, but it'll be fun to watch that. So most of the time when we see birds, they are looking for food. Birds have high metabolisms. They need to eat a lot. So hunting, fishing, foraging, fly catching, you'll see all those activities, and they can really help you figure out what a bird is. Nesting, is it in a cavity like this little woodpecker? Are they building a stick nest? There's a lot of different types of nests out there. So when you're seeing a bird carrying material, it's probably headed for a nest. And then how busy is the bird? Sparrows tend to be more still. They look for food on the ground. Warblers, on the other hand, are flitting around constantly up in the trees. They're insect eaters, and they have to move quickly in order to catch insects, which are doing their best to evade them. So here are three birds showing their feeding styles. That's a whimbrel, a type of curlew that was taken up at Fields Landing. I think it's caught itself a little crab. And the top right is a western tanager. We have them here right now. They just came in the last few weeks. Beautiful bird it spends most of its life down in Central or South America and just comes up here to breed and eat berries. And then under that western tanager is a purple finch eating seed. And that's off out of my feeder in my yard. They love that black oil sunflower seed. This little bluebird, female bluebird on the left, she's bringing nesting material into her nesting box at the park. In the center picture there, that's a black Phoebe who just caught himself a nice moth by the river. And belted kingfishers, if you can park yourself somewhere at the river and get to watch a kingfisher applying its trade for a little while, you'll have great fun. This one caught itself a little crayfish down by the river. Another good tool to be familiar with when you're getting better at identifying birds is a range map. So most range maps, this particular one is for a merlin, and that's a falcon that we get around here in the wintertime. Range maps are organized by color and time of the year and what the bird is doing during that time of the year. So they're very often color-coded similarly. So the range map that you find in the Sibley Guide will be the same colors as the one that you find in the National Geographic Guide, etc. Purple is usually purple, permanent resident. Some kind of warm color is breeding. Cool color is winter, that type of thing. Migration is shown in another color. But anyway, it's a really important thing to know. You might think you've got a really special bird, but it doesn't occur anywhere west of the Mississippi. So be sure to check those range maps when you're identifying a bird. And then habitat is another good clue to what you're seeing. You're not going to see a cactus wren in the redwood forest, but knowing a little bit about your habitat and what kinds of birds it attracts is a great way to give yourself a head start on identifying a bird. So that's the spruce forest, Sitka spruce forest up by Trinidad, Chaparral, somewhere in, that's a stock picture. I didn't take that one. That's taken somewhere in Central California. Those ducks, that's at the Arcata Marsh. Wonderful wetland restored up in Arcata, and that riparian scene is not far from my house outside of Garberville. And anytime you can get by the river or water in general, you are likely to see birds. Places to go. So here in Southern Humboldt, the community park is really a wonderful resource. There are all kinds of birds there. In the wintertime, you can see the white-tailed kite, the northern harrier hunting there. Sometimes the bald eagle will fly by. There's almost always turkey vultures, ravens, crows, etc. But those trees that you see there also have a wonderful variety of birds in the winter and the summer. In the wintertime, lots of different sparrows are there. In the summertime, all kinds of breeding birds come. Right now is a great opportunity to acquaint yourself with some of the most beautiful birds that have come up from Central and South America to spend a very short breeding season here before they go home again. And of course, the park also has access to the river. You can see the kingfisher at the river, several kinds of ducks. So the park, you really can't go wrong. Just don't go in the middle of the day once it's hot. That would be my only recommendation. That's a picture of the Arcata Marsh up there, that picture on top. Again, a restored wetland. Over 300 some odd species of birds have been identified there. They get rarities there. There's all kinds of rich bird life there. Spend a day there. You will be richly, richly rewarded. And then if you have time to make a trip out of town, I highly recommend the Klamath Basin area. There are several wildlife refuges there. Depending on, right now is not the best time because of the drought, but when on a good water year, it's a great opportunity to see thousands and thousands of waterfowl, lots of eagles, bald eagles, golden eagles, all kinds of hawks. It's just a real birding wonderland. A few other more local things. We also have a wonderful National Wildlife Refuge just south of Eureka here, Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge. It not quite as rich as the marsh, not quite as compact. So if you're more into a nice long walk, it's a great place to go in the wintertime. They have tundra swans coming every, about November to February. Fantastic place to see tundra swans pretty up close and personal. The Bald Hills area is very exciting. That's a turnoff north of Orick. That's where they're going to be releasing the California condors in, I hope, the next year or two. That's a project co-sponsored by the Yurok tribe and the Ventana Wilderness Society to relocate California condors to one of their original habitats. Very exciting time. Photography. I think photography is a great way to get good at birding, and birding is also a good way to get better at photography. If you are already a photographer, you probably know the equipment that you want to use for birds. But if you're willing to spend a few dollars and you're not that familiar with photography, I really recommend what's called a bridge camera, which is a glorified point and shoot with a lot of magnification capacity. So it's like having your binoculars within your camera, and you can bring the birds in really close, get a decent photo, and then get it up on the computer and look at some of those field marks that can really help you with identification. Making your yard a hotspot. I am not a gardener, but I think that it's a wonderful idea to plant native plants right now, both for the purposes of surviving whatever crazy weather we're going to be having. Definitely looking at more drought-resistant plants that will attract birds but live through our long hot summers. By all means, get a bird bath of some kind. You can get a cool little solar fountain to float in your bird bath, and that will bring birds into your yard, even if you're a terrible gardener like me. Some of us find out the hard way that birds eat things we don't want them to eat, like our cherries or other fruits that we're trying to grow for ourselves. So that's also another good way to bring birds into your yard, is your own food crops. And there's my email. I'm redoing this webinar because we weren't able to record the first one, so I don't have any. You won't be asking me any questions, but I did want to try to remember a couple of the questions people asked when we did this live. One was about hummingbirds, and they are really easy to attract to feeders here. And so just use plain sugar water. You don't have to get any of that colored stuff. And we have two types of hummingbirds here in the summertime, one type in the wintertime, and then a third type that just comes through during migration. So hummingbirds are definitely easy to attract here and a lot of fun to see and to watch. Let's see. Oh, somebody else asked about birding by ear. And my recommendation when you're just starting out is to begin to associate the sounds that you hear with the birds that you're seeing, and just let your brain take care of sorting that out. It's really hard for most people to, unless you have a really good ear, which not everybody does, but it's great to go out with a birder who does, you'll learn a lot. But for most people, just abstractly learning bird songs can be really challenging. So just try to listen to the birds that you see and learn that way. Somebody else asked about whether feeding birds prevents them from migrating, and that's definitely not a problem. Birds are, their instinct to migrate is so strong that scientists have done all kinds of things to trick them into thinking it's the wrong time of year, the wrong direction. One experiment that comes to mind is a bird was put in a cage, completely covered, and taken to a different time zone, and it still, when it was time for it to migrate, it was bashing itself against the wall of the inside of the cage, trying to get out and go the right direction for its migration. So no, birds are going to migrate. They either find food along the way, or a lot of birds migrate without eating at all, which is quite amazing. They'll travel 3,000 miles without stopping, and their muscles are wasting, their organs are wasting by the time they get where they're going. They need to eat badly. So I guess that's about it. Please feel free to contact me at that email there, and I would be happy to help in any way that I can. So I'd like to thank again Friends of the Lost Coast for giving me this opportunity, and thank you all very much for your kind attention. Have a good evening.